Nick here, Various Desk Custom. Today we're having a look at the Elms Desk A4. Now this is a budget engraver from Elms Desk. Obviously it's called the Elm A4 because that's A4 size, so you're looking at engraving areas 260 by 210. Now it's a very simple, small stepper motors, cantilever sort of frame here. Everything's pretty much like all your stuff's already installed on your main board. This is a kit. We didn't bother time lapsing it because it's pretty basic. You obviously basically just got to bolt your sides on, wheels go on, you sort of attention them so that they've got a little bit of slip in them still, so they're not too tight. Obviously if they're too tight it won't roll very smooth. And then simply cut your belt. Now you've got to be careful with these bits of acrylic here when you clamp down. I broke one, but they do include spares, so that's just something to keep an eye out. Now this is installed with Laser GRBL, which there's multiple different programs you can use. We started out with Laser GRBL and then we changed over to Lightroom, which has got a 30-day trial, which seemed to be a lot better, did a little bit better job. So we've engraved a couple of different things. We've done some MDF, some suede leather, and we also did a canvas which we painted and then knocked back. So let's show you some of the results close up. So we'll start with some of the MDF. Now we did this in a I can't quite remember what it was called. It was a series of dots to sort of adjust the shading. As you can see, it's come out quite dark. Obviously there are things you can adjust, but sort of found that it was okay, but I found it a little bit dark for this. And then we did our logo. It came out a lot nicer. You can we did this in a grayscale. You can see a little bit of differentiation between the colors. It came out not too bad. And then this is just the line art again. We're just playing around with the power every time we did it. I think we dropped this down to about 10% at about 60 millimeters a second. It was quite, fairly slow. Obviously, a lot of this you've got to sort of find the power to speed ratio, so it's a lot of testing to do. And then this is some of our suede we did. We started at different things and we sort of worked our way through. And I think this is our best one that we did at about, I think we dropped it down to about 7% power at about the same 60 millimeters a second. It did a good job. That was at a higher power, but also at a higher speed, and it wasn't very clean. So you've got to trial and error, really is all you can do on this machine to get it right. So it can get quite good results. And then this is what we did here. This was it took us about 14 hours, I think. We probably could have sped it up a little bit. As you can see here, we had a bit of an issue. We kind of didn't quite set our head far enough over, so we ran out of space. As you can see in the time lapse, it actually sort of hit up against the machine, but you can get good results. Now we did this on painted acrylic. We did try some different coloured paints, but they really didn't. You sort of see here some of the darker stuff coming through, but it didn't really sort of go to plan. If we're going to try this again, we'll probably do bands of colour sort of across here, and maybe do it in a grayscale. Sort of it varies the cutting power, so you can maybe get a little bit more definition. But for a cheap machine, it's come up quite nice. So one thing you must use anytime you use a laser is a set of glasses. Now the green I've heard is not exactly the right color for the wavelength that this laser is. It should be orange, so I'm not 100% sure, but it'd pay to look into, because obviously you don't want to stare at a laser for a long time. If this is the incorrect color, we've got another laser and we got orange came with it, which I'm pretty sure is the color you're meant to have, which all of my 3D printers that were UV resin were around the same sort of wavelength, and they were all orange windows, so I think it's meant to be orange, not green. So it might pay to do a bit of research, and if you need orange, I would recommend getting orange ones. So now we've showed you some of the results. We're going to talk through some of the things we don't like about this machine. Now the biggest thing is it's okay there with the heads back there, but when the head's back out here, it's quite tippy and it's quite easy to move around. So obviously this is acrylic and alloy, it's quite light, so if you're going to use this, you probably almost want to maybe, if you've got a printer or something, maybe make some channels that you can run up and bolt this down to an MDF bed, and then you can actually go through and you can mark a square tube and mark some square, and then mark some sort of measurement lines to help line up. And the other thing is just the way the cables are. I think part of our reason our big one failed, I think our cable was actually caught in there, which did limit it a little bit. So obviously you'd really want to have something, something that came up there that held it up in place. It would sort of keep it from or even then it sort of drags down. It's just something to try to keep the wires sort of tamed a little bit more, because yeah, that's not ideal when it sort of does that and flops down. You know, there's one thing that most people are going to ask is how long it sort of does take for something like this. I think this took about an hour. Like it's not a fast process. You probably could churn it a lot and go a lot faster. It's sort of trial and error with a lot of this with this machine. This is probably one of our best results, but this one actually we sort of stopped halfway through because it was already about 5 hours in and I wasn't going to let this running overnight. So if you guys want to check these lasers out or any of the other ones on Banggood, we've got a link in the description below to all the different ones I've got. I'd probably recommend something maybe with a square frame around it so you don't get that cantilever sort of drop. Now it's handy for putting on pieces of wood if you had it, but if you're going to leave it set up somewhere permanently, you'd want something a little bit more solid. So until the next video, have a good one.